We're going to take a look at the Revocation of Consent form, which is the WK-109-111. This used to be two forms, the 109 and the 111, and the update that we did last year combined it into two forms, and so that way you're not confused on which one you need to be using. So not a lot of people should probably have access to this form because revocation is something that's probably best handled by administration and school psychologists. But we do want to show you how to use that form and how it functions in case you're interested in using that in your database. So when you come to the top of the form, it has the LEADM selector at the top. It tells you that once you select which legal education decision maker to include in the notice, you click save, and then it will populate that information. So, for example, if you first open your form and there are no LEADMs selected at the top, it will not be addressed to anyone. So let's say you have a contact 1 on your demographics page, and you also have a contact 2. You click save. And if you look then below, it will generate those two contacts that you have on the screen. If you have a third contact, you can also add that. It's not very common, but I will show you here. You can see that that one's blank. So if you get to that and you find out, well, that's blank, I don't need it, you just simply uncheck it again and click save. So also on this LEADM selector, you will see that the contact number 1 on demographics prints out George and Winifred Barnes, and it's got the address. And so you might ask, well, why isn't the address completed or filled out for LEADM number 2? And this is associated with the checkbox that says, do not print this address. So if you have checked that on the demographics page, it keeps that parent's address to where someone cannot see it, and it still doesn't print out on forms. So that way you've got that in there as a confidentiality piece of information that you don't have to disclose if it's not supposed to be disclosed. At the top of the form, you will see a drop-down menu that allows you to choose which type of revocation you're going to be using this form for. So it says there's revocation for all special ed and related services or placement. And then you have the choice for a particular special education and related service or placement. So anybody who's a legal education decision maker for a student or parent can revoke all of their special ed services and placement, or they might just say, hey, I like what you're doing over here, but I am refusing or revoking this specific service or this specific placement. So that would be a particular or partial revocation. So for demonstration purposes, we're going to select the first one. Over here, you just fill in the date that you complete the form. And then you can see here, this has an effective date listed. So if the parent contacts you and says, hey, I want to revoke services or placement for my student, or I'm the student, I'm 18, and now I want to revoke those services, it lists an effective date of revocation. So the way it stands, that person has to give a written notification. So sometimes in the past, you've seen people send an email that says, I want to revoke my services, or someone would tell you, I want to revoke this service or these particular services or all of them, and you'd need to request a written revocation from them. So this is that form that you use to be able to provide them that information or a way to provide that information to you on a form. So let's say that we were told today, 7/17/23, that this revocation needed to be effective. The person, whomever it is doing the revocation, maybe it's LEADM number 2, maybe it's LEADM number 1, you fill that information in. That does not complete automatically because the system can't determine for you which parent requested that revocation. So in this situation, let's say it was number 2. Here, it completes the sentence by saying that you have the authority under the laws of the state of Kansas to make educational decisions for this student listed above or myself, and I'm revoking consent for. So this is a duplication of the title of your page. So if you chose all special education services, that's what you would click. And you can see the reminder here again to click save. The reason you click save is because depending on the option that you choose, it depends on the option you choose. that puts out which form you're going to use. So you can see here for all special education and related services or placements, this specifically states that after that person has provided a prior written notice, like a PWN of those termination of services, that the LAA has to stop providing those services. It doesn't go retroactive. It doesn't negate an action that's already occurred after that consent was given and before it was revoked. So this includes the appropriate information for notification of that parent and saying, okay, you are requesting revocation in writing. So here are some understandings for you, and it lists those out, including the one that talks about how if the student is going to be, let's say that parent wants the student back in special education in a couple of months, that an initial evaluation process must be taken in order to evaluate that student for special ed or related services. So it provides all those notifications. Once you have that, the parent is able to sign. If they're sitting next to you, you can simply fill in the form. They can sign here and they can click save. If you do that, it will sign the date and time stamp it here underneath your signature. So if they forget to fill it in here, it's just another one of those things that can make sure that you've got it documented correctly. They can sign it there. And then this, remember, the yellow portions do not print, but this is a parent's rights version in English and a parent right version in Spanish. So at that time, if you've not already provided that person with a copy of the parent rights, it's available for you to click on and you can print it right from there. So a lot of people will ask, they'll say, hey, I am not using electronic signatures, or I'm not sending it through the parent portal. How in the world do I use this form? Can we still use it? And the answer is yes, because you can see the line here underneath and the date line. If you leave this blank and nothing is signed in this box, then it's simply going to print the signature line like it would have done on any form that doesn't have the electronic signature capability. So even if you don't sign it electronically, it's still available in this format, in this version, for you to be able to print and then have the legal education decision maker sign. I'm going to scroll back up to the top here, and we're going to cover the particular special education and related service or placement. We are also going to come here and say, this is the following particular placement that I want to revoke. It's got the reminder here to click save. So if I come up here and I'm only doing a partial revocation, you can see that it changes just a little bit. It says the following special ed or related service. This gives you a text box to describe in writing what it is that LEADM or parent is wanting to revoke. So there's not a drop down that says, I want to revoke speech. I want to revoke, reading services. It's very specific to that student. And so this looks a little bit different when you're doing a particular service or placement, because you need to type into the box what it is that the revocation is for. Just like the other form, there are some notifications provided in that. It includes that notification that after you're provided the PWN and termination of services is when it's effective. So they have to remember this is not a PWN. This does not take place of a PWN. This is in addition. So that's in bold and underlined. So that way you can remember that a PWN still needs provided. It tells you what the revocation means. It has the same negation statement that I had on the one where you're revoking all services. I think the difference is that if the IEP team determines that this student needs that special ed or related service in order to receive a FAPE, that the servitor placement service or placement will continue. It reminds them of their procedural safeguards and that they have the right to request mediation or due process. So because of this, at the bottom, there's an additional portion here to fill out for your school representative, which might be your school principal or the LEA administrator, or someone who's got the ability to sign as the LEA. So as the school representative on the student's IEP team, I don't know who it is. Certify that on behalf of that team, this student's team considered this revocation, and we determine that the student does or does not need that special education and related service that is being revoked in order to receive a FAPE. This is going to set the tone for what the next step is. If the parent is going to be looking at mediation for a disagreement, or if the administration says, yes, in fact, this is not going to affect FAPE and we're going to leave it here. So those are things that are included on a partial revocation that you don't see on a revocation for all. The signature works the same way. You can sign it here, click save. It will date and time stamp it, or you can just click display to print, and that will print out, and then the person can sign it in. If you have any questions that we haven't already covered about the WK-109/111 revocation consent request, feel free to reach out and email. You can email Amber or Brian at webkids.org. Thank you.